Hey folks, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds, and today I'm hanging out with special guest Sarah Dahlinger, and we're going to be talking about monster design. Jump down to the description below where you can find Nerdarchy, the newsletter, game weekly tips as learn how to game with Nerdarchy. So I've got Sarah with me today, and we're going to be talking about monster design, and she knows a little bit about monsters. Do you want to tell us, a little bit about your background?
Sure. I've been drawing monsters ever since I was, this big. And recently was nominated for an Emmy for this book, The Atlas Animalia, which is about, 125 monsters. And, I've studied under Tara Whitlatch, and she's just phenomenal in the world of monsters. She designed, all the Star Wars beasts and stuff like that. And, essentially I've just kind of been drawing monsters always.
Nice. So, what is your personal design philosophy? Do you have one when it comes to creating creatures? Obviously, as a wee lass, you were probably drawing things you wanted to draw. Now you draw professionally, so it's a mix of probably drawing what you want to draw and what people pay you to draw.
Right. Even as a little kid, I was very concerned with how things work, how things function, and size. So I would never play with toys that were not scaled correctly to each other.
Uh-huh.
And if someone was drawing a dragon, I remember being like 8 and looking at these dragons with these teeny tiny wings and being like, how could that possibly support that giant beast in the air? And then that kind of led to my love of anatomy, because I always wanted to figure out if you're gonna put a dragon in the air, should it have giant shoulders, and how would that fit in with his pectorals and all that good stuff. So then that led me to really the anatomy of creature design, which is one of the reasons I studied under Terrell, because that's kind of her shtick too. And it was kind of like it's like a duck in water. As soon as I was exposed to that manner of thinking, I was like, right, this is what 8-year-old me couldn't actually articulate, but I wanted to do. So I like creatures to work.
So you made the monsters work for you.
Exactly.
And even if you look at Dungeons and Dragons and probably other earlier role-playing games, early on, they didn't really worry about that as much. They just drew, and
they did. They did.
It totally evolved. And I think even in the early days, Gary Gygax had oh, you work in our warehouse department, but I see you drawing. That looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Do you want to put some stuff in our books? And then you really start to see it change over in 3rd edition with Todd Lockwood, where they really are trying to make the monsters make sense in a fantasy world.
Todd Lockwood was I call it my gateway drug.
Yeah.
To D&D. I went to Borders bookstore, which isn't even a bookstore anymore, I don't think. And I found the monster manual, the 3.5, and Todd Lockwood's dragons were in that, and it just blew my mind. I was like, this is it. They look like cats. You can see them, how they would move around with agility and speed and intelligence. And that was kind of how I got hooked. And then I just I need to know more, and I need to know more, and then that path just leads you to here, I guess.
So when you're making monsters, do you prefer mythological creatures, things that are more based off of animals, or horror based? Do you have a preference?
I do. I generally tend towards the animal kind of kingdom, because there's so many creatures already in mythology that are based on naturally occurring animals, and then you can always do the animal mashups and see if you can combine the sort of DNA patterns of a mouse and an elephant, and see what that looks like. So you never run out of
Mashups,
stuff.
you say?
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, that was I did a demo, and then Metal Weave Games was like, would you like to do an entire book? And I was like, yes, I do.
Which, it's a fantastic book. It's an art book, but there's also a PDF to go along with it that has the monster stats from 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons.
Yep.
Which, by the way, was the coolest idea ever. I'd like to say we're responsible for Crystal Solely doing the same, because we kind of harped on her about it.
Oh, did she do stats for hers?
Yeah, because
nice.
after you guys did, I'm like, that's an amazing idea. Because you have all these monsters and these cool things in a book that you can actually put on your gaming table and let your players look at without giving away the mechanics.
Right.
And then as the DM, you have something to look at and use and insert into your game. So I thought that was a genius thing that you guys did with Metal. Is it Metal Weave?
Yeah, Metal Weave Games. Yep. Yeah. Andreas loves doing that. So for that very reason. So you can have sort of a talking point or reference, and then the DM will have the stats.
So what are some of the monsters you've made up, and what is kind of the process you went through?
I usually start. Sometimes it's just for fun, so it's just kind of random. So sometimes it'll be I want to take a feline and a fish, and what happens. So what's a cool feline? I'll be like, all right, a tiger. What's a cool fish? Oh, a sailfish. And then you pop them together and see what you can do. And that's basically, if you know the anatomy of both things, you can kind of work on like hooking those anatomies together to make a creature that theoretically could work, like let's say in a alien ocean. If I'm doing like just for fun kind of mythology stuff, I love looking up, I'm a nerd, it's like I like the traditional, I like dragons and I like griffins and, you know, all that good stuff.
So when you're creating stuff and drawing stuff, are you also creating a narrative for them in your mind when you're drawing it?
Yeah.
Or is it just a visual image?
Well, one thing I'm working on right now is I have like a personal project, and it's alien sharks. And
that's oddly specific.
It is. Well, I was watching this.
Are there lasers involved?
Not yet. Not yet. But I was watching this Netflix show, and they talked about how sharks have like a coating on their teeth, and it's like a Teflon kind of coating, so they have zero drag. So I made this joke how they have zero drag murder miles. And then I was like, what if I drew that? So I've just been making...
That should be the name of the book, Zero Drag Murder.
It is, yeah. Zero Drag Murder Miles, Alien
genius.
Sharks, What They Eat, and What Eats Them is going to be the book. And it's just a whole bunch of sea creatures, or maybe kind of humanoid creatures that live kind of on the land, but they also hunt the sharks. And that's been a really fun thing that I've been currently working on. Right now, it's on my Patreon for my patrons, and I'm going to make one more monster and then kind of debut it to the public, and we'll make chapters ongoing.
Oh, so, and that was just off of, you know, just some odd tidbit of knowledge of information.
Yeah, like I watch documentaries, like, look, they're like my life's blood. So I, like, every day I'll watch a new one or rewatch one or something, and I saw that fact, and that stewed in my head for maybe a year. And I was like, oh, I could make them alien sharks, and then I could add weird stuff to them and everything. And
so what are some of the alien sharks you're designing?
So right now, I just finished my deep sea one, and I combined a frilled shark and anglerfish, and then added some extra bells and whistles, because, you know, when they're aliens, you can stretch them and pull them. I added, like, this big bulbous, like, gelatinous kind of hump to his back that fills up when he has food and decreases when he's starving, because things in the deep sea don't get a lot of meals. And then I worked on something, a creature that would live to the land, and they have this, they're like a humanoid kind of salamander lizard thing, and they have like a right to manhood, and they have to swim down, and they may encounter this shark. And, you know, then obviously prestige and stuff like that. So we're kind of making the story as we make the creatures and stuff like that.
That makes sense. You like swim down, you're like, oh, there's one of those sharks. I can see its feedometer. How full is the feedometer?
Yeah, and it has
it's
like the little
empty.
glowy lights,
Yeah.
you know, and so it's
So
like,
it's
oh
all
god,
eerie.
it turned the lights on. No, swim away.
So with that, are you going for more fantastical or more like sci-fi?
It's kind of more sci-fi. Yeah, like the creature design is, yeah, definitely more sci-fi. Yeah, because I made a spacesuit for the guys to be in. So yes, of course. Yeah.
So if you had, you know, a tip you wanted to give someone who is creating monsters, what would be like your number one tip?
I would say learn animal anatomy. Definitely learn animal anatomy, because a lot of people, once you know how animals are put together, it feels like all the doors open, and you can do anything. Like you can, like, it's not even like hard. Like you can look at a bird and a horse and be like, Pegasus, that makes sense, you know.
So do you also look at things like ecology and like an ecosystem and how that stuff plays with each other, or not so much?
I do a bit, but it's like on the periphery almost, because where I look at animals and read about them and watch YouTube movies and stuff all the time, they're always in an environment, so you just kind of pick that up on how that is. So like when going back to that deep sea shark, it'd be like they don't get a lot of meals because they're in the deep sea. So then knowing that, I was like, well, how could it store food or something? And you run like that.
In Atlas Animalia, a lot of the creatures that you come up with are variants, right?
Yeah.
So different. You're taking something that someone is familiar with and putting it in a different region, a different climate. How difficult was that? How much thought did you have to put into that?
You know, it's funny because I feel like I've spent my entire life getting ready to make this book because of all the BBC documentaries I have watched. Like,
finally, it all comes together.
No, really, it really felt like that. It was like, you know, I was watching like on my mom's black and white TV, like with the dials and the bunny ears and stuff, and
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh, give me some of that like you know, something from Nova or something, or Nature. And so, honestly, it wasn't that hard. Like, it felt like I had, like, this just backlog of all this stuff that had never been tapped. And then they were like, can you make variants for monsters you love and already know? And I was like, oh, I can use all this back here, you know?
Because I imagine, too, like, even, like, an Arctic region, you take an animal, put it there, and then you have to decide, like, how does it traverse snow and ice? You know,
Yep.
I imagine it changes the padding of the feet. You know, so that either they're walking, they have to be able to walk on it, or they have to be able to go through it or over or whatever. You'd probably know better than me.
Well, for like an Arctic sort of thing, there's like a few things that we know are true. So a bigger body holds heat better than a little body. So they would be bigger probably. So like that's why polar bears are so huge. And in lynxes, that's why they have their giant paws, or like snowshoe hares, that's why they have giant paws. So they're like natural snowshoes. So they would have big feet with like a ton of fur and just giant paw pads. And so, yeah, it's like watching all these documentaries, you just pick stuff up and then you can just inject it into your monsters.
Nice.
Yeah.
So before we head on out, we want to tell people who you are again and also where they can find you.
Okay, cool. So, I'm Sarah Dahlinger. My last name is Dahlinger. I know it's a mouthful. And you can find me on Sarah Dahlinger Art on Facebook and Instagram, Dahlinger Art on Twitter. And if you just search my name in Patreon, that's where I am too. Just search Sarah Dahlinger. That's where I am.
Nice. Thanks for hanging out with us. And you guys, what do you think? What are your go-tos for monster design? We have a place where we talk about that. That is down in the comments below. While you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. So until next time, stay nerdy.
Thank you.